Join us this morning. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Thursday, March 26th, live from Seoul. I'm Shin Min. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at this hour. Global leaders from the world's 20 wealthiest nations will meet online this evening for an emergency G20 summit on COVID-19. President Moon Jae-in will share South Korea's experience of getting a tight grip on the coronavirus situation. Los Angeles city and county leaders have purchased 20,000 coronavirus test kits from a South Korean biotech company. Seoul's top office will be setting up a task force team this week to deal with the flood of international inquiries for Korea-made COVID-19 supplies. U.S. Forces Korea tells South Korean-based workers that they will be placed on furlough starting next Wednesday. It's an unfortunate result of the stalled defense cost-sharing talks between the two allies. Our starting point this morning, a status update on the coronavirus situation here in South Korea. As of the end of Wednesday, a total of 9,137 people in the nation have contracted the virus, with 3,730 patients back at home after making a full recovery. The death toll stands at 127. Now, despite the recent decline in cases here in the nation, the major worry now is that the country has seen a sharp uptick in the number of imported cases. One country of particular concern is the United States, and that concern has been reflected in a change in quarantine policy. Our Lee Seung-jae starting us off.
100 new coronavirus cases were reported in South Korea on Tuesday, up from 76 a day earlier. Despite the slight rise, it marked the 14th consecutive day that there were 100 or fewer additional cases. Despite the optimistic numbers, the growing concern in South Korea is the rise of imported cases of COVID-19. Among the 100 confirmed cases on Tuesday, 51 were international travelers who recently arrived in South Korea. 29 were from Europe, 18 from the Americas, and 4 from Asia. So far, South Korea has reported 227 imported cases, totaling 2.5% of all cases. Reacting to the swift spread of the coronavirus in the U.S., South Korea has implemented tougher quarantine measures on those arriving from the U.S. According to a senior South Korean Health Ministry official, all passengers from the United States will be required to self-isolate at home for 2 weeks starting Friday, regardless of whether they are showing symptoms or not. If a passenger shows symptoms, they will be quarantined at a special facility for monitoring. The latest measures apply to South Korean and foreign nationals. On a brighter note, the number of coronavirus patients in South Korea who have fully recovered is rising fast. Latest figures show more than 40% of confirmed patients have been discharged from hospital. As of the end of Wednesday, the fatality rate has ticked up, with 1.4% of coronavirus patients in South Korea dying, up from 0.5% earlier this month. Patients in their 80s showed the highest fatality rate of 13.6%. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Later this evening, President Moon Jae-in will be sharing South Korea's experience responding to the coronavirus outbreak at the upcoming G20 virtual summit. Now, the session is scheduled for 9 p.m. Korea time on this Thursday. And the leaders of the world's 20 wealthiest nations aim to step up international cooperation in welfare and quarantine, as well as minimizing the pandemic's negative impact on the global economy.
President Moon Jae-in will be explaining our government's preemptive and active quarantine and welfare measures, particularly introducing the country's swift and transparent information provision to the public and people's voluntary efforts to fight the outbreak.
President Moon is also expected to raise a need to allow business people to travel overseas to kickstart the global economy, so long as it doesn't negatively affect quarantine efforts. He will also share Seoul's measures to protect small businesses hit by the outbreak. And the summit was initially arranged by Saudi Arabia, the G20 presidency, following a request by the international community. Coronavirus testing kits and other related supplies made in South Korea are garnering much of the attention around the world as many countries battle a surging number of cases. The U.S. county of Los Angeles has inked a deal with a South Korean biotech company for 20,000 test kits. Officials from LA County also say they'll almost certainly be back for more. Our Kim Hyo-sun with the details.
The U.S. County of Los Angeles has put pen to paper on a deal with South Korean biotech company Seegene Technologies to purchase 20,000 coronavirus testing kits. The LA City Council and the city's Board of Supervisors said in a press release that it will spend $1.25 million immediately due to a major shortage of diagnostic reagents across the U.S. The statement also said a larger contract is in the works as the company has committed to providing 100,000 testing kits a week to LA. The first batch will be dished out to medical professionals and first responders. Amid surging demand for South Korean testing kits, Denmark's health minister has apologized for refusing a helping hand extended by Seoul to supply testing kits to Denmark. According to local media on Wednesday, the minister said he was sorry for declining the offer and admitted countries like South Korea and Taiwan had handled the outbreak well. He has come under fire as the country's medical staff is experiencing a major shortage of testing kits following the government's decision to expand the target of the screening from only healthcare providers and those who show severe symptoms. Meanwhile, South Korea's presidential office will set up a task force team this week to deal with the flood of overseas demand for South Korea's COVID-19 related supplies. The team will be comprised of officials from several related ministries. The decision comes as Seoul's foreign ministry confirmed nearly 50 countries have requested or made inquiries about South Korea's coronavirus testing kits. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea's Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs says it will minimize the size of the inaugural West Sea Defense Day commemoration ceremony slated for this Friday morning. Now, the ceremony is to remember the sacrifices made during the Second Battle of Yeonpyeong and the sinking of the Cheonan warship. Some 200 officials, including the bereaved family members and the military personnel who took part in those battles, will be attending the ceremony. The ministry said scaling down of the event over COVID-19 did not mean reducing the importance of protecting the country. With South Korea transparently maintaining a low mortality and high COVID-19 cure rate, a growing number of countries that banned travelers from South Korea are gearing up to welcome them back. According to South Korea's embassy in Laos, Laos Airlines will resume flights between Incheon and Vientiane as early as April 1st. The airline first scrapped flight services to and from South Korea last month due to the COVID-19 concerns. In a similar move, the Czech Republic says it's removing South Korea from its list of high-risk coronavirus countries. South Korea's ambassador to Prague said flights between the two countries, which were suspended in early March, will begin again soon after the EU loosens its rules on entrance into the bloc. The EU's disease control agency says people hoping the summer heat will stem the spread of the COVID-19 are most likely going to be out of luck. The research goes against previous forecasts by scientists that the spread of the coronavirus will slow as the weather heats up. Now, the report by the European Center for Disease Control said there is, quote, no evidence to date that COVID-19 will display marked winter seasonality such as other human coronavirus in the Northern Hemisphere. The report also said COVID-19 is able to maintain high levels of reproduction in tropical and humid regions like Singapore. Over 465,000 people around the world have now been infected by the coronavirus, and the global death toll has exceeded 21,000. Italy and Spain are seeing the biggest daily number of deaths at nearly 700 each. Spain has surpassed China in terms of overall coronavirus deaths, now second only to Italy. And confirmed cases in the U.S. have also topped 65,000 with more than 900 deaths. India declared a complete lockdown on Wednesday, banning people from leaving their homes. In the UK, Prince Charles has tested positive for COVID-19. Clarence House says his symptoms are light and his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, is fine. Spain also announced its deputy prime minister that has tested positive for the virus and is receiving treatment. The United States has started notifying thousands of South Korean workers at U.S. bases in South Korea that they will be furloughed starting April 1st. Now, the news comes as Seoul and Washington have failed to agree on the details of the special measures agreement for the year 2020, despite tough 7 rounds of negotiations. Our foreign affairs correspondent Oh Jung-hee with the details.
U.S. Forces Korea is sending furlough notices to thousands of South Korean workers at U.S. bases in South Korea, and about half of the workers are expected to go on unpaid leave starting April 1st. On Wednesday, the notice by the U.S. Department of the Army said employees will not be allowed to serve as an unpaid volunteer, should stay away from their workplace, and are prohibited from performing any work-related duties. Some 4,500 to 5,000 workers are to go on unpaid leave starting April 1st and remain that way for an unknown amount of time. This comes as Seoul and Washington failed to agree to the special measures agreement for this year, which determines how much Seoul contributes for U.S. forces stationed in South Korea. The allies met for the latest round of negotiations in Los Angeles last week. It was the last opportunity to prevent a furlough, but the two sides couldn't see eye to eye.
We strongly propose first signing a separate deal on wages for South Korean workers, but the U.S. opposed it, saying the process can be further delayed.
The U.S. initially requested $5 billion, but lowered that to $4 billion, but that's still 4 times more than what Seoul paid last year. South Korea sees the amount as excessive and is sticking to a roughly 10% increase from last year.
We are continuously discussing the amount and reducing the scope of it. The U.S. says we have big difference, but we don't think so. We are talking about some meaningful numbers.
It is unclear when the next round of negotiations will be held. Seoul says the two sides will continue their talks through diplomatic channels or personal lines. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
The World Health Organization has thanked the Japanese government and International Olympic Committee for making a tough decision to postpone the 2020 Tokyo Olympics. Speaking at an online media briefing on Wednesday, WHO General lauded the decision made to protect the safety of athletes and the fans. An IOC president also said the committee is currently exploring all options before confirming a new time frame. Admitting that rescheduling Tokyo 2020 is like a, quote, huge jigsaw puzzle, he added new dates will not be restricted to the summer months. Shifting focus, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is calling on G7 countries and the rest of the international community to keep pressing North Korea to return to the denuclearization talks. Speaking at a press briefing on Wednesday local time, Pompeo said the G7 needs to be united in calling on Pyongyang to return to the negotiations. He also said the international community needs to be committed to diplomatic and economic pressure over the regime's illegal nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Such remarks come as the North Korea-U.S. denuclearization talks have been stalled since the leaders of the two sides failed to reach a deal during their Hanoi summit in February of last year.
Good morning. Rain is soaking Jeju and Jeollado province right now, and it will gradually spread to rest of the country as the day goes on today. Well, Seoul had a bright start to the day, but will turn rainy soon. And the further south you are, the heavier the rainfall. Jeju and the south coast could see up to 150 millimeters of rare spring downpours. In fact, mountainous parts of Jeju are under a heavy rain advisory. Temperatures still will stay on the warm side. Seoul and Incheon will get up to 20 and 21 degrees Celsius respectively. But this band of showers will bring an end to the unseasonably warm temperatures. This weekend will be a chilly one with lows going down to just 3 degrees Celsius here in the capital. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for news around the world.
And that does it for us at this hour on Arirang News, but we'll be back with more of the day's headlines coming up in our later newscast at noon Korea time. Thanks as always for watching, and goodbye.